Donald Trump's press secretary did something really weird during his first White House press conference. He walked out in front of a room full of reporters, looked them in the eye, and told an obvious lie about the size of Trump's inauguration crowd.
This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period, both in person and around the globe.
Then he accused the media of lying about the crowd and walked out without taking any questions.
I will see you on Monday.
A lot of veteran journalists were floored by what Spicer had done. He hadn't just lied, he lied about something so silly and obvious on his first day as press secretary. And 2 days later, he did it again.
Do you stand by your statement that was the most watched inaugural address?
Sure, it was the most watched inaugural.
Sure, it wasn't even the last lie that Spicer told that week. The next day, he defended Trump's bogus claim that millions of people voted illegally during the election. For reporters covering the White House, the whole week probably felt like it was straight out of the Twilight Zone. And it raised a really tricky journalism question. How do you cover a White House that isn't afraid of being caught lying? Look, it's not like White House press briefings are super interesting to begin with. The White House doesn't want to get caught lying to the public, so they're usually super careful about what they say at these things.
I'm going to decline to comment on that specific question.
And as a result, journalists pay a lot of attention to what little the White House does say. There's an expectation when the White House talks, it's not just making stuff up. But Trump is different. He and his surrogates have shown themselves to be really comfortable with lying. During the campaign, the fact-checking site PolitiFact caught Trump lying 249 times. And it wasn't just a campaign thing. Since being elected, Trump has lied about voter fraud, his fight with the CIA, and saving a Ford factory that he didn't actually save. I talked to Jay Rosen, who teaches journalism at NYU, and he sees Spicer's press conference as a symptom of a much bigger Trump problem.
It's way beyond a press secretary willing to stand up and spout untruths. Trump's political style is an attack on the very idea that we could have a common world of facts that we disagree about.
And whether you think Trump is doing this on purpose or not, it poses a really big challenge for news networks, because blatantly false information from the White House is basically propaganda. And journalists have to treat propaganda differently. For one, news networks need to start acting as a buffer between the White House and the public, not just an uncritical messenger. And CNN actually did a good job of this during Spicer's first press conference. While MSNBC and Fox both ran live feeds of Spicer's comments, CNN held off and waited until it was over to tell viewers what had happened.
Sean Spicer, the White House press secretary, just made a statement where you are. Right. Tell our viewers what he said.
That may seem minor, but it actually made a big difference. Fox and MSNBC viewers had to wait 5 minutes to find out Spicer was lying, and that's only if they kept watching after the press conference. Where on CNN, the fact that Spicer lied was the story.
This was not obviously the biggest attendance at an inauguration in U.S. presidential history.
To be fair, CNN went back to just live streaming Spicer's comments 2 days later, so, you know, A for effort. Another approach would be to stop taking these press briefings all that seriously. Rosen recommends sending interns to cover White House press briefings instead of seasoned veterans who could be using their time doing investigative reporting.
That's what the more experienced people should be doing. They shouldn't be wasting their time waiting around for a briefing that's going to contain either no information or misleading information.
The bottom line is, news networks are going to have to start taking government information with a grain of salt. The government releases a ton of data about the world, about crime, health, foreign relations, major policy initiatives. Journalists under Trump are going to have to get used to triple checking and independently verifying everything the government says.
And if on day one you're willing to tell two inaccuracies like that on issues that don't matter that much, or matter less than when real stuff starts happening, that's a concern.
These changes might sound obvious and easy, but it's actually a big shift in approach for a lot of newsrooms. You have reporters who have spent their careers developing contacts and relationships at the White House, and they now have to accept that the White House is not a useful source of information, or could even make their reporting worse. That's a big change to accept. Rosen refers to it as a grieving process.
There's grieving for a lost ritual here that they have to go through, and they want it to be the same. They want the briefing to be useful. They want to have cordial relationships with Sean Spicer. They wish it could go back to what it was.
But it's not going back, at least not for a while. We live in a world where the White House is now a major purveyor of misinformation.
Believe me. Oh, believe me.
And news networks that don't change their behavior accordingly are going to have a really hard time calling bullshit when their audiences need to hear it the most. Thanks for watching! Strikethrough is a new Vox video series focusing on media coverage in the age of Trump. Or, as Sean Spicer would say, the biggest, most impressive video series of all time.
Period.
Period.